Product Talk with Malti.
Everyone, this is Malti again, and welcome to yet another episode of Product Talk with Malti. And I am today super excited to host Anurag. Well, for people in the product world, Anurag Verma is known strange name, right? A lot of people would be familiar to Anurag. Hey, Anurag, welcome to this episode.
Hey Malvi, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So, just a little intro about Anurag. Anurag is an ISB and NIT alumni, and he has had flavor of working with both MNCs as well as being part of the startup hustle, working with Make My Trip, Disney Hotstar, Goldman Sachs, and most recently, he is the director of products at Make My Trip. And he's also probably one of the few product leaders who has had the experience of building B2C products as well as B2B products. The mantra of my podcast as well, which is from India, for India, and for the world. And today, we are actually going to be touching upon an area of expertise for Anurag, which is very, very, I would say, the one of the most toughest part for any product, right? Which is monetization. So today, Anurag and I are going to spend some time talking about his experiences, his advice, and what has worked for him during this conversation today. So, Anurag, I would like to start with understanding how was your, entry into this zone of monetization and AdTech in your journey of products.
Sure, Malti. So what had happened was post ISB, I'd started my career actually at Make My Trip, and I'd worked there for like close to 4 years, and I'd worked on the mobile apps for Make My Trip, and that was a great journey. I got my first flavor of consumer internet. I learned how to ship mobile first products. So all of that was great, but I had spent close to 4 years, right? And at that point of time, I was thinking what to do next. And my thinking about like picking up a next gig has always been about how do I pick the next big trend, and how do I kind of get into something that I can spend fair amount of time, learn the ropes, and then hopefully gain some amount of expertise in it. So at that point of time, given that mobile products were already becoming big, I had started the mobile products journey in 2012. By 2016, it was a mobile first journey in India. I was thinking what next, and then automatically mobile ads came to my mind, right? Because ads as a pillar of monetization has always been there. This is what lubricates the internet, right? So I was looking at various options. I was getting some inbound interest. At that point of time, someone reached out from InMobi. I'd heard a lot of good things about InMobi. Thankfully, the rounds went well, and I ended up at InMobi. So that was my first stint in the ad tech world, in the monetization world. So the InMobi experience was interesting because InMobi is a network. So what a network does is it connects advertisers with app developers or website owners who want to make money through ads, right? So you are kind of the pipe in between. You are connecting advertisers to app developers or website owners who are publishers. So that was a very interesting experience, and that was a B2B experience, like I said, coming from Make My Trip, where it was a classic consumer internet experience. This was more on the B2B side. At InMobi, I was actually in charge of supply side products. So the set of products where you face the publishers, people who are actually running those ads within their apps or website. So that meant the SDK or the piece of code that the publisher integrates into his website or app. I was in charge for that. Obviously, the publisher onboarding tools. They need to look at how much money they are making. So obviously, they pull data through our reporting APIs. A lot of publishers are very sophisticated, so they pull all that information off our reporting APIs and then build automated dashboards. On top of it, they do real time yield management. So it was very interesting. I actually kind of understood how interesting AdTech was and how many intermediaries are there in between. So, in a typical context between the advertiser and the final publisher who is running the ads, there can be as many as like 5 or 6 intermediaries. This is something that a lot of people don't really know. So, that was very, very interesting. And then after in Mobi, I actually went to Hotstar.
Mm-hmm.
Two reasons. And Hotstar was again, my role was AdTech centric. So I was in charge of AdTech products at Hotstar, but the lens had changed. I'd moved from a network lens to a publisher lens. Now I was actually in charge of figuring out what ads to run on my own app and how do I make money out of it, right? So that lens change was also very interesting. I learned a thing or two about video ads for sure. Obviously, I'd done a fair bit of video ads at InMobi, but this was like full video, right? This was video first, video, everything was video. The ads were also video, a bunch of things that you need to do for your advertisers, right? And the goal was to basically become a video ads destination, right? You're competing with the Facebooks and YouTubes of the world. So how do you kind of get to that position? Also, another one very different thing for Hotstar was most of the ads were direct sold ads. What that meant was that my sales team would, or Hotstar's sales team would directly link up with the advertisers and figure out what kind of ad spends they wanted to do on Hotstar, right? So that meant that you were working with the advertiser very, very closely. So that gave me that other perspective also, like what kind of goal. Obviously, I had a good understanding of what advertiser goals are, but in this case, I was actually talking to a lot of marquee brand advertisers, directly talking to a lot of agencies. So that kind of completed the picture for me. So InMobi and Hotstar actually completed the entire sort of ad tech story for me, where I actually got a very good understanding from sort of both sides. So yeah, that was primarily the journey. That is how I got into it. Very good experience, both at InMobi and
Oh
Hotstar.
wow, that's, to be honest, like I myself have not spent a lot of time in ad tech, and I'm sure that the experience that you have gathered over ad tech, not so many people across the industries would have gone to that depth. So thank you. That's quite interesting to know. So beyond ad tech, Anurag, right? I mean, I'm sure being a monetization expert, you would have seen various kind of strategies span across different kind of products, right? Some kind of monetization strategies work in a certain industry. Sometimes it is about the nature of the product. So any what have been your experience beyond ad tech, the monetization strategies that has worked across products?
Absolutely. So there are a wide variety of strategies when it comes to monetization, right? So some companies have monetization baked into the product, right? If you are an e-commerce company, the monetization is then and there, right? And then you're basically trying to figure out how do you kind of sell it at a price where you are EBITDA positive, right? So I'll keep that aside, but I'll talk about some of the other interesting strategies that people do, right? So first thing is a lot of again. So I'll talk about content heavy apps, right? So imagine you are a game, right? A gaming publisher, right? You are basically a game studio. So let's say you are, let's say Zynga, right? Publish a lot of games. So for gaming publishers or for this particular bunch of apps, there are two large pillars through which you can do monetization. Obviously, the obvious one is ads, but then there is also in-app purchases, right? So imagine you're playing a very immersive game like Temple
Hmm.
Run, right? At right points of time, I'll pitch you, let's say, okay, why don't you take up this top up, and basically this gives you a superpower to basically get over the next five barriers with ease, right? So in-app purchases is a very strong pillar of monetization for large gaming publishers, right? And a lot of people again don't know this, but in fact, for immersive games, actually in-app purchases make more sense than ads, right? Because ads tend to be
Correct.
disruptive, right? For casual games, it's fine. Let's say you're playing a simple word game, there are natural bricks in the gameplay, the board is getting set up. In between, there are natural gaps, so you can basically sneak in an ad. But in-app purchase is big, and so big that for very large studios, so for example, let's say Clash of Clans, right? They rely exclusively on in-app purchases. They don't do any ads whatsoever. It's it's surprising, but some publishers have gone completely the other way around, right? Because in-app purchases, what they do is they allow you to monetize, and that does not impact retention at all,
Okay.
right? So that's one, right? We'll speak about ads at depth, but the next thing I wanted to talk about is ads itself can come in multiple forms. A lot of forms need not be intrusive, right? For example, sponsored listings. It's a standard industry construct now, right? So let's say I'm an e-commerce player. Amazon does a very good job of that. Even today, even Make My Trip does this today. In the travel world, Booking.com does it, right? So sponsored listings where you are organically, or rather, with some money being paid by the advertiser, you are boosting up the rankings so that they get more impression share when the user searches for a certain product, right? And that ad format is not really
Hmm.
intrusive,
Correct.
right? If you do a good job of your sponsored listings where you kind of maintain that quality bar of what kind of products you are boosting up, it might be a good fit for the
Correct.
user, right? So that's definitely there. Similarly, another flavor of ads I could say is brand stores, right? It again fits very well with e-commerce companies, right? So let's say again, at potentially, let's say at Make My Trip, I could have, let's say, Taj Hotels brand store, right? And what that does is that is not intrusive for the user. It might, in fact, even drive delight for the user if I'm doing targeting absolutely spot on, right? So let's say I figure out that this user is a premium user, right? And Taj Hotels might have good salience with this kind of customer. Why not, right? I'm helping drive discovery, and that discovery can lead to a lot of delight for the user, right? So that is obviously there. So these kinds of formats are there, which are very native in a certain context, and that helps drive a lot of monetization for a lot of these companies, right? The third way to monetize is not use your own traffic, but piggyback on some third party traffic, right? This is again a trick of the trade. There are a lot of good sophisticated companies know, but it's not typically known to people who are not in the ad tech world, right? So let me give you an example, right? What do I mean by that? So imagine Flipkart. Flipkart has a lot of user data, right? But given that they are an e-commerce company, they can do only so much ad load on their own websites and
Right.
apps, right? If you do ad load beyond a certain threshold, then users will get distracted and your conversion rates will drop, and users might even get irritated, right? But then obviously there's so much data that they can potentially monetize, just that they don't have enough ad space on their own website and app. So what do? You basically go and partner with another player who does not have probably that amount of data, but they have a lot of ad space where they can run it, right? A typical example can be Hotstar, for example, right? Given that it's an OTT app, it would not have the kind of rich data on the user, what kind of interest, right? So let's say if I want to figure out who is an electronics enthusiast, right? Now Hotstar will not have that data, but Flipkart has it because I know probably Malti buys a lot of electronics products, right? So what Flipkart can do is Flipkart can pair up with Hotstar and say that the advertiser will onboard the campaign on Flipkart, but eventually that ad will run on Hotstar with Flipkart's audience, because it's the same
Hmm.
user, right? So it's the same user. Let's say the same Malti is coming to Flipkart, and Flipkart has data on Malti saying that Malti is an electronics
Hmm.
enthusiast. When Malti goes to Hotstar, if I'm able to figure out the same user identifier, and we can go into details of how you find out it's the same user, but if I'm able to find out that it's the same user, I can serve an electronics ad on Hotstar, right? So Flipkart benefits, Hotstar benefits. It's a win-win for both. In fact, to some extent, Malti also benefits because she's not seeing irrelevant
That's
ads,
right. It's
right?
like an
So,
ecosystem
so this,
coming together.
yeah,
Right.
right. So this is like data monetization without using your own traffic, right? So you're using third-party
Right.
supply, right? So there are many such ways in which there are many such interesting ways in which you can basically monetize. Another flavor is maintain a good balance between in-house ads and third-party ads, right? So for example, let's say you are on Hotstar, right? And I want to sell you a subscription. I want to pitch you Hotstar Premium, right? So maybe sometimes I'm showing you, let's say a Sennheiser headphones ad, but I don't want to keep pinging you with third party ads because they can get intrusive. So the second ad I show you is a basically in-house ad where I'm basically showcasing Game of Thrones, right? So A, I'm not wasting my ad spot. B, I'm actually using my ads as a segue to driving my
Hmm.
subscriptions, right? So that itself can be another way of driving up subscriptions. You are not letting your ad spots go waste. Even if you don't have a third party ad, you run in-house ads to basically drive where you want the user to go, right? A lot of such interesting ways are there, basically when it comes to monetization. It's an art and craft that generates billions of dollars, right? The entire internet is lubricated with ad money, right? The big daddies, the Googles and Facebooks of the
Right.
world. So a lot of science, a lot of maths, a lot of brains are actually, in fact, they keep saying that the best brains in today's economy still continue to work on
Hmm.
ad tech.
Completely. Yeah. And actually, during, when you were talking, you were actually talking about a lot of ways where, products are making sure that, it is not interfering with the user experience because you don't want your user to run
Yes,
away, right?
absolutely.
So when you
Yes,
are, as a product manager, you are working or your team is working, let's say with the designers, with the marketers, with the ad tech team. what would be some of the guidelines, to kind of maintain that thin balance that you do not overdo it, but at this stay still at the same time you are able to, push the relevant ads in front of your users? What would be some of those guidelines?
Yeah. So even though it might sound ironical coming from an ads guy, but you can actually make ads that are delightful for the user. Uh, and it can also be very contextual to the actual environment in which you are seeing that
Mm-hmm.
ad, right? I'll give you again some very specific. Actually, these are industry leading
Mm-hmm.
examples. So, for example, Facebook, right? Facebook pioneered that in feed ad format, right? Where the ad comes in the feed, does not feel like an ad, and hopefully, if you have gotten the ad targeting right, it's actually content that you will most likely
Right.
engage with, right? And that ad format, when they launched it first, it's called a native ad format. Native because it is so native to your context that it does not really feel like
Mm-hmm.
an ad, right? uh, Similarly, there are other ad formats that make a lot of sense in specific contexts. For example, at in movie, though I cannot claim that I launched this ad format, I was the pioneer in this ad format, but there were a lot of examples in the Western world, especially gaming publishers, where a lot of such games were showing these playable ads. What is a playable ad? So let's say you're playing a game. Given that you're playing a game, most likely you are a game enthusiast, right? And let's say you are playing a casual game. Let's say you are playing a match three game, and I want to pitch you an ad. I feel that given that you are playing a match three game where you are matching three jewels or three patterns, you are a good candidate to install, let's say, a board
Mm-hmm.
game. A board game. So what I will do is I will show you an ad that showcases the gameplay of that game. So basically, it's a very curated bespoke ad where you can actually play a few steps within the ad
Right.
itself, and that generates a lot of excitement for you, and then you go on and basically install that particular game, right? So again, a gaming enthusiast getting a playable ad, he's actually able to play a few steps within the ad itself, right? And then installs the game, the other game, right? So again, like the goal is to make it as native as possible to that particular sort of context. There are more interesting formats coming up. So let's say if I'm a travel brand, I would love to maybe showcase. Let's say I'm a tourism board, I'm Dubai Tourism, right? I might want to showcase Dubai through 360-degree
Hmm.
video ads, right? And those 360 video ads can work really, really well. Even regular browsers can play 360 video ads, so it can work really, really well. Let's say in an OTT
Correct.
context, right? So that's how you kind of try and be as less intrusive as possible,
Makes sense.
right? Second way of doing this is basically like any other classic product management role. You look at data very, very closely, right? You look at what are the engagement rates. In fact, in AdTech world, you're always kind of managing that barbell between what the advertiser wants you to do and how much money you need to pass on to the publisher. So what I mean by that is, let's say Uber comes to me, and let's say I'm Hotstar. Uber comes to me and tells me that, you know what, I want you to run an app install ad for me for Uber, but I'm willing to pay you only, let's say, X dollars. Let's say I'm willing to pay you only 30 rupees, or let's say 40 rupees, half a dollar per install, right? Now, if I have to make money out of it, I have to make sure that every time I show an ad to the user, he's likely to install
Hmm.
that. He's likely to install that app. Until unless he does that, I don't make any money, because my contract with the advertiser is I get money only if the user
Right.
installs. That means I have to make sure that the engagement metrics of my ads are high. I have to make sure that the click to conversion, so click through rates of my ad should be high, click to install conversion should be high. Only then I make money. If my install efficiency per thousand impressions is not high, which we used to call CVM, conversion per thousand impressions, I will not
Hmm.
make money, right? So it's not just in my favor to just throw an ad in the user's face and the user is not interacting with the ad. I have to manage that barbell. Otherwise, the economics of the ad tech business don't work out for me. Which means you have to look at data very, very closely. You have to make sure that the targeting is spot on, and only then you will get healthy operating metrics for the ad, and then you will be able to make decent amount of money. The advertiser would not be interested in you if you're not delivering, let's say, 10,000 installs every
Right.
day. So you have to make sure that the volume that he's looking for, if you want to become a serious publisher, you have to make sure that the volume of goals, the volume of conversions, the volume of installs, the volume of orders placed that the advertiser is looking for is actually
Hmm.
getting hit. Even if I, even if I'm able to deliver the efficiency metrics, which is $40 per install, but I'm delivering only 100 installs a day, advertiser is not going to be interested in spending money on me. He might go to some other
Hmm.
place, right? Who will waste his energies working with a publisher or a network that is doing only 100, 200
Right.
installs a day, right? So the scale becomes
Right.
important, right? And because scale is important, which means you need to reach as many users, and yet you need to kind of reach them in an unintrusive manner, it becomes very, very challenging. Very, very challenging, right? So yeah, that's how we kind of look at data, try to build a experience that is delightful, try to optimize the ad load. You figure out there are natural ad breaks in certain circumstances, then you do it. Then you do some kind of, you can do zany strategies also. So if you know, let's say someone is binge watching something, and now he's desperate that this guy is going to watch Game of Thrones come what may. You can maybe throw, if to the regular user throwing 3 ads in 30 minutes, maybe you will throw 5 ads to this guy, because he is going to continue consuming content. He's not
Correct.
going to go
Correct.
away, right? So yeah, we do all of that stuff.
That's very 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 insightful, Anurag. So let's say if there are some PMs who probably want to kind of explore ad tech, for example, for the monetization of their products, where do you recommend to get start from?
Well, if people are in India, and I'm assuming we are recording for the Indian audience, of course we are. So I think the best place to start to learn AdTech is basically at a publisher. I actually went the other way
Mm-hmm.
around, but I think the best way you can actually learn fair bit of AdTech is by working at a very large publisher, right? So go to any content-based company, right? And who are our typical publishers, right? So the Times of India's and NDTVs of
Hmm.
the world, right? So Times Internet, for example, is a very large
Hmm.
publisher, right? They get a lot of page views. Obviously, the first prerequisite is millions of
Hmm.
page views. If you're not there, then you cannot be a serious publisher, right? Or you go to one of these OTT companies, right? Uh, or even let's say you go to a large e-commerce player which gets a lot of page views, right? So a Flipkart on Amazon can be a great fit for you
Right.
as well, right? What that does is it allows you to learn the ropes of ad tech without getting subsumed in a lot of
Hmm.
jargon, right? Because when you approach it from the network world, day one you have everyone bombarding you with so much stuff. Someone is coming talking CPM, someone is coming and talking about DSP, someone is talking about network, someone is talking about eCPMs, and you are like, I really don't understand all this stuff. Let's start with the basics, right? So at a publisher, at least you get that comfort that, hey, my job is to basically show an ad and still not turn off the user and retain the user, right? And hopefully I have a lot of page views, so I will be able to make serious amount of money. So start with basic principles, and then you slowly sort of progress, right? So, and what that does is when you work at a large publisher, a lot, you work directly with a lot of advertisers, right? Because large advertisers and large publishers, it's the relationship is already probably been there for like lots of
Correct.
years, right? You get to work with a lot of large marquee advertisers. You get to understand their mindset, right? So you're directly working with your consumer a lot more, one side of your marketplace a lot more compared to what you would do in an ad network. You kind of tend to specialize on
Right.
one side, right? So that's my recommendation. It's easier to get into these publishers also because they're typically their ad tech stack might be sophisticated. So a large publisher like Amazon might have very
Right.
sophisticated ad tech stack, but in general, it's not so sophisticated as compared to some of the intermediaries, right? So you also have that opportunity of headroom to build and drive a lot of impact. So I would typically recommend that if you want to
Yeah,
start in
no,
ad
that
tech.
I think that's a great advice. And you kind of spoke about a lot of acronyms, and I'm sure that when somebody is getting started and during different types of products monetization strategies, there are different metrics, right? So would you want to talk about some of the metrics which are usually like the core
Yeah,
that a product manager
absolutely.
should be aware of?
Absolutely. So obviously, starting with the super basic metrics, obviously you have click-through rates and downstream conversion metrics, right? Like any typical standard funnel. But then there are a lot of metrics that are unique to the ad tech world and depends on the ad format also. So for example, let's talk video ads, right? So video ads, what you have to do is basically also instrument the quartile metrics. If 25%, 50%, because typically a lot of these video ads are skippable video ads, right? So what kind of quartiles are you able to hit with the video play? Because these are longish, it can be longish ad side, it can be 7 second ad, right? So you want to make sure what advertiser is trying to do is basically trying to craft a brand narrative through these video ads, right? Very typical to TV, very similar to TV, right? So typically these brand advertisers do a lot of video ads, and their goal is that the entire ad should be seen by the user. If the user skipped off the ad, then it's no good, right? So the quartile metrics therefore become very very important. What else is important is, unlike TV where you typically see always with the audio on, in case of video ads a lot of people can mute the ad, right? So audio metrics become important, right? So these are very interesting metrics that you have to showcase, especially if you're trying to become a serious video ads player. You want to actually publish these metrics very very transparently to your advertiser, saying that most of the ads on my platform have certain quartile rates. Most of the ads on my platform have audio on, and so the advertisers are comfortable that whatever ad spends they are doing is actually hitting the mark, right? Then another very interesting thing that you do is basically you look at, so direct response advertising, where you directly are trying to get the user to do an action then and there. So let's say you're trying to get the user to install an app. So there, the efficiency is coming through in terms of what kind of cost per installs you are able to deliver for the advertiser, right? But let's say I'm doing simple brand advertising. Let's say Mercedes Benz has this new car that has come into the market, right? And they want to showcase it to folks who are car enthusiasts, right? Now, how would Mercedes Benz measure that whatever ads are being shown on, let's say, YouTube or Hotstar are actually effective, right? So what you do is you do downstream what we call as brand lift studies, which measures aided and unaided recall. So what you do is you basically try and throw a survey after you have exposed the user to a certain amount of ad impressions from that particular brand. You then throw a survey. You say that how likely you are, when it comes to buying a car, how likely you are to basically recall Mercedes Benz as a brand that you would want to buy from, right? And you might have seen some of these surveys on YouTube. If you consume content on YouTube, might have seen these surveys sometimes coming to
Right.
you in between two content plays, right? So those are actually brand lift studies where you're trying to actually measure whether you were actually able to drive some kind of recall in the mind of the consumer or not, right? So those kinds of metrics you have to. It's not just sufficient to just show that, oh, I delivered 100,000 impressions of this ad and you run away with the money. No, you actually have to show then, okay, this was actually able to deliver incremental brand lift for you, stuff like that, right? So these metrics are very specific to the ads industry, and we have to do a good job of these. If and this is from the advertiser's lens, right? But let's say I'm a publisher, right? And let's say I'm working with, I don't really work directly with the advertisers. Let's say I'm an indie app owner, right? So let's say I have an app which has, let's say, 5,000 downloads, right? And I hook it up with, let's say, Google Ad Network or InMobi Ad Network, right? Now my goal is to make as much money as possible. That means InMobi wants its publishers to make as much money, right? Otherwise, those publishers will
Correct.
churn away. That means if I'm working at a network, then I'm looking at what kind of CPMs I'm able to, which is like money that the publisher is able to make every 1,000 impressions. What kind of effective CPMs I'm able to deliver to the publisher, right? So those kinds of metrics become very very important. And like in any other B2B context, then things like what kind of onboarding rates I'm seeing from my publishers, right? Is a publisher able to kind of onboard himself in a self-serve manner on my self-serve dashboard? What percentage, if X%, if 100 publishers arrive and start onboarding, how many of them actually go to a point where they actually start seeing the first dollar, right? So like any classic B2C funnel, this becomes the funnel. Or like any B2B PM who should actually care about onboarding, most of the PMs don't. But but then that funnel becomes then a metric to chase, right? That becomes really really important. And then you want to look at what percentage of your publishers are actually, let's say, making more than $1,000 uh, a day, right? Stuff like that, right? So basically, they've crossed that chasm and they've become like a significant publisher for you, right? So there is an advertiser's lens, there is a publisher's lens, right? So all these things become important, and then, like I said, the classic funnel metrics are here also, right? So if it's an engagement heavy sort of ad, so let's say it's a playable ad or interactive video ad, then even if the user did not install the app, at least how many levels did he play? So if I have 3 levels of gameplay in my ad itself, or 2 levels of gameplay, did he play 2 levels? How much time? How much so-called dwell time? How much time did he spend on my playable ad? Stuff like that. So all of those things become important. And in the network, in a network context, like I spoke about, delivering value for the publisher is important, which is measured in terms of
Hmm.
eCPM. And the way I will be able to deliver that CPM is, like I said earlier, is by focusing on this conversions per thousand impressions
Hmm.
metric, because a lot of spend on any network is direct response ads, performance advertising ads. So conversion per thousand impressions becomes like a super key important metric. If you nail that, only then whatever money is coming from the advertiser, you will be able to pass on something to the publisher and keep something for
Right.
yourself, right? And publisher would probably keep 80% of it. You get, as an intermediary, you get to keep only
Hmm.
20%. So those metrics become like super important. So yeah, it's no different from, let's say, consumer
Right.
products.
And definitely, I would say it's like a mini masterclass that I had on this call right now. Okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds that was like very very comprehensive, Anurag. So I mean, as I'm kind of thinking more about it, right? For a product manager, whether they are leveraging ad tech as a lever for monetization. Of course, there are multiple partners here. It could be a third party, then you are the publisher or the vendors, advertisers. So, and beyond that, any other monetization strategies that you choose, there is a lot of cross functional collaboration which is needed, right? And definitely you are like on the spotlight when you are leading the monetization strategy wing.
Yes.
So what would be some of the things that a PM needs to keep in mind, and how do you kind of navigate through this cross functional collaboration?
It's really tough. I mean, when I in consumer products itself, I used to feel there is just so much cross collaboration that you need to be on top of. When you move to the AdTech environment or a B2B environment, it just goes through the roof, right? So, like, if an organization is big on ads, that means you obviously have a large sales team, which you need to keep happy. You have an ad operations team that you need to keep happy, because those are the guys who are actually onboarding those campaigns physically, actually uploading those assets, making sure those tracking pixels are in place, right? Obviously, you have the CRO breathing down your neck, chief revenue officer, boss. You were supposed to make so many millions of dollars for me. Why didn't it happen? And then obviously you have the usual suspects, the publishers and the advertisers, who are also, who want certain brand goals to be, certain campaign goals to be met, etc., etc. It is indeed tough. I think what the only thing that kind of helps is just staying one step ahead by basically giving them a teaser of what is there to come. Ultimately, the goal is to make sure that everyone, you are able to enable all of those to become successful in
Right.
their roles. A BD guy or a sales guy is looking for, hey, can you throw me a new ad format that I can pitch to the advertiser, and that helps me close my sales targets, right? So then I'm always thinking that, okay, is there a new bespoke ad format that I can launch that can be probably unique in the market, that helps my sales guy close this faster, right? For example, when it comes to reducing the load on my ad operations team, then I'm thinking, is there a way I can maybe shift certain percentage of my ad dollars to a programmatic pipe, right? So maybe I go integrate with a third party network. I'm Hotstar, I integrate with, let's say, Google Ad Network, and 30% of my revenue starts coming from there. So then the pressure on ad operations team for direct ads lessens, right? So yeah, you have to, like, in your product strategy, it does not, it is not just stakeholder communication and just making sure that the meetings are happening at the right cadence. I think the way to reduce pressure on yourself and to everyone and for every other group is to basically bake it right into your product
Hmm.
strategy. Like at Hotstar was a 100% direct sales shop. And when I came in, I was like, you have so many millions of page views, the kind of DAOs you have, 20 million, 30 million DAOs. Like, who has that kind of DAO in the entire world? If you are asking your direct sales team to basically fill all that inventory supply that you have, so many ad spots, they will never be able to
Hmm.
fill it. There's only so much video ad demand in the Indian market. There are only so many ad dollars in the Indian market. If you are relying your sales team to fill all of that, never gonna happen, right? And yet they have pressure of selling. I have pressure of increasing the revenue. I have certain revenue targets that I want to deliver. Why not maybe piggyback on programmatic, right? Or why not, let's say, partner with Flipkart, the example that I
Correct,
quoted
correct.
earlier, right? So I think, at least for me, it has always been about this one thing that has stayed with me from my MBA program. That this is the only one learning that has stayed with me, is that make sure that you are doing something so that your stakeholders' goals or their incentives are aligned with what you are doing, right? So I always try to bake it as a conscious strategy in my roadmap itself. Can I do something for my sales guys? Can I do something for my ad operations guys? Can I maybe build a self-serve platform so advertiser can come and directly kind of onboard his campaigns, right? My ad ops team or my sales team does not have to get involved, right? So yeah, so stuff like that. That's how I try and manage. If those guys are happy, then basically the unnecessary meetings go away. The unnecessary stakeholder management work that you have to do goes away, right? So I'm a very minimalist kind of guy. Reduce, make sure that you kind of try to keep people happy in terms of your roadmap, in terms of your strategy, so that they don't feel the need to touch base with you every single day. Otherwise, then you are just, your entire day just goes in doing meetings only, and that's not something that I'm very happy. If I have to do meetings the entire day, then it does not work well for me. My style does not work well. My working style does not just work well with that kind
Right,
of
right.
mode.
No, no, I think you kind of nailed it. I think it is all about empathy. That, if you are empathetic towards your stakeholder, if you are kind of working towards that, what is bothering them and how you can solve for it, I think getting that alignment kind of just nails it down. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
And-
But still, it's very difficult. Like, from a consumer product guy, shifting to a B2B environment just takes that stakeholder collaboration work probably to, like, it does just 10x's or
Hmm.
100x's it. So yeah, for anyone who works in a B2B environment, my sympathy is for them. Probably that's the reason I came back to consumer internet. Okay, let me take a break from all the stakeholder management that I have to do.
I know, yeah, the stakes are slightly different, so the expectations are also like that. Yeah, I understand that. So I think, when we were talking about this from a technology perspective and user experience perspective, there is whole lot of contextualization, making it part of the overall experience so that it doesn't feel intrusive. You kind of spoke about a lot of those things. I
Yeah,
probably have one more question is that, like, in the last few years, technology has kind of really elevated, helped us elevate the user experience, right? And I'm sure that has had a huge impact on the AdTech world, the way we are thinking about our monetization strategies, right? So what do you think that is the influence that it will have in the product management function?
yeah. So I think, what all these new technologies that are coming up, right? So for example, let's talk AI, let's talk AR, VR. So some of these trends actually help you craft experiences that were just not possible earlier, right? Or let me take a simple example. For example, 360 videos did not used to exist until the phone cameras became capable enough to record 360 videos, and now 360 videos are all over the place, right? And that's just such a beautiful experience, right? Similarly, there are a lot of interesting AR experiences that you can do, which can then be coupled with ads, right? So for example, there was this unique ad that you might have seen when Nokia Lumia first came out, right? Where you just point the phone camera, right, at a certain spot and showcases which all eateries are next
Yes.
to you, right? So that's an AR experience where you are kind of, so you can do those kinds of interesting, very in situ kind of ad formats, right? Just point the phone camera, it shows you what are the places to see around you, right? And some of those spots are actually sponsored listings, right, or sponsored ads, right? So there's a lot of these interesting things that you can do. So for example, another example of this is, let's say you're playing a game, and let's say there's and it's part of the gameplay itself. So there's, let's say, a building which is part of the gameplay, right? So let's say you are going in or coming out, and one banner on that building is probably, let's say, a Coca-Cola banner, right? So it's built into the gameplay itself. And what now the new technology, or the computer vision technologies, or the AI technologies let you do is, early on you had to kind of, that Coca-Cola banner was static. Now you can actually change it at runtime. So sometimes you see a Nike banner, sometimes you see a Coca-Cola banner, and it does not feel like an ad because this is part of the game itself. So that's very very unique. Like, uh, let's say it's a pizza delivery game, right? And so you can basically build, and let's say there are a lot of ads you are showing for a lot of, let's say, ingredients that you use in your pizza, right? So actually you can, at runtime within the gameplay itself, you can actually supplant, right? So let's say you were showing an oregano ad, now you suddenly show, let's say, some other topping that you want to use, right? Let's say some unique kind of sauce, and maybe it's a Heinz sauce ad, right? So those kinds of very interesting things you can do, and these kinds of formats were not possible earlier, because obviously the tech stack had not evolved to that extent, right? You could not do generative AI, right? So stuff like that you could not do at runtime,
Right.
right? Uh, so that's there, and then there is obviously some when I look at it from a data analysis, data modeling lens, a pure data science lens, then for example, stuff like, if I have, so for example, what happens today is, either publisher leans, let's say a game publisher is there, he will lean towards in-app purchases, or he will lean towards ads, right? But maybe you can run a multi-objective algorithm that finds a good balance between in-app purchases and ads, right? So sometimes you're pitching the user in-app purchases, sometimes you're showing the user ads, right? So you don't have to bias one way or the other. You're able to make some money, incremental money, through ads also. You're also showing the in-app purchases, because again, in-app purchases have that same problem, right? If you do not allow the user to progress through gameplay, and every time you stall the user saying that, hey, you died, now you have to you have to spend some money to kind of earn a new life, the user is going to churn away, right? So you can maintain a good balance. You can run a multi-objective algorithm which does, okay, sometimes in-app purchases, sometimes ads, and then you continue to maintain the retention, and yet you drive more incremental revenue,
Right.
right? So a lot of data science, data modeling will continue to become better as some of our sort of CPUs and GPUs become more powerful, right? So yeah, so for example, ads are always orthogonal to retention, right? So how do you kind of keep improving the monetization, the in-app purchases, ads, while you continue maintaining the retention? What happens in 90% of the cases in today's world, at least, the ads guy is a separate PM, the consumer products guy is a separate PM. So PM who is looking after retention does not care about ad revenue. The guy who cares about ad revenue, the ads product guy, does not care about
Right.
retention, right? But the future is going to get to a point where these worlds converge. The ads guy will care about retention, and the retention guy will care about ad
Correct.
revenue, right? And those kind of multi-objective algorithms will come into the picture as the stack evolves, right? So yeah, that's broadly how I
Yeah,
think
yeah. No,
about
I
this.
think that.
And then the interface aspect, rapid creative experimentation, stuff like that. Because even today, after, in 2024, building creatives is like a 3 day process. Like someone will take, put it on Figma, export it, like they're like, I don't know how things are still so it feels like 1980s, right? A lot of organizations, when it comes to building creatives, take like 2 3 days just to kind of craft out those creatives. It is painful. It is not very easy. You have to, someone has to understand the brand essence, the USPs of the product, then craft a beautiful video or a carousel, set of banners which can be put into a carousel. Even those basic things will obviously
Yeah,
become faster.
correct, correct. No, that's right. And I think you kind of took some really good examples of how it kind of elevates the user experience as well as creates new opportunities from a monetization perspective with in-app purchases. Experiment a little bit with that or with the ad tech, right? So yeah,
Yeah,
so I think it was very very insightful, Anurag. I mean, I really wish I could continue this conversation more, but I'm sure
no
the
worries.
folks who listen to this are going to be very very. It's very helpful.
Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much,
Mansi.
Anurag, for sharing this time and these insights with us.
No, pleasure talking. Absolutely, it's an area that most of the people don't appreciate, and I always love to talk about AdTech. It's
I'm
never
sure. I'm
enough.
sure. Probably you want to kind of share some resources that you share, or resources you recommend folks to look up to if they want to kind of gain more insights in this.
Uh, I would strongly recommend that maybe look at what
Hmm.
Amazon does. They they are such so good at some of these things. I would not recommend some of the traditional media literature or internet literature. It can be very
Okay.
confusing. But just go look at how Amazon has slowly kind of built products in every single area. They do sponsored listings, they run ads on their platform, they have brand stores, they have now built a DSP of their own. They have these creative authoring products where advertisers can come and use their tools to basically quickly craft their creatives. They have a beautiful self-serve. Just look at maybe some of the industry leading players, what they have done. Amazon is one example. Maybe there are others, right? And then try to kind of understand that picture, right? A lot of interesting things are happening. For example, connected TV has come into our living rooms, right? And now connected TV is the next sort of real estate to be monetized, right? So look at some of the leading players, preferably a publisher who has built sophisticated ad tech stack. Once you start understanding that, then you go build from there. Then you maybe go to some of the uh, industry publications out there, or there's ad exchange, there's stack exchange. There are like so many websites who focus exclusively on ad tech. The only problem with those websites is they will just drown you in jargon, and maybe the guys who are writing that content also probably don't understand all those jargons themselves, so it can be very
Got
confusing. Because people who are probably writing some of those content, maybe some of those product marketing guys don't have a full view of the
correct.
industry, right? So they tend to be confused themselves, and what they write, the output also reflects that, right? So it tends to be very confusing. So start with a simple picture and then kind of build
Got
from
it.
there.
No, I think that's a brilliant call out. Thank you, Anurag. Yep. All right. Thank
Sure.
you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Malti. Pleasure
Yeah.
talking to
Same
you.
here.
Product Talk with Malti.